Camínala.
Hello and welcome to the Dave Perez Show. Today I'm honored to have a historian, a publisher of 2 books, and an all-around wonderful guy as far as I know. So with no further ado, Mr. John Binder. So, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Welcome to River Forest, Dave.
Yeah, they don't allow too many people like me here, but...
Oh, come on. It's very inclusive. We must be 1% Latino, if not higher.
Yeah, Sunday today because I'm here. That's why. Oh, God. But, you know, what I want, thank you for being on the show. I've known you for a while.
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, oh my God. And, you know, you still owe me for the lawns that I've done in the past. So, but with that being said, I wanted to talk about, start off with other than all the stuff you've done, where'd you grow up first off?
Okay, so my parents had a house, first house they owned on the north side of Chicago, around Irving and Ashland. I think around 6th grade they moved to the near north suburbs. So I went to school there, including high school. Went to a college at the, well now it's UIC, was Chicago Circle back in the day for a couple of years, and then went down to the University of Chicago on the south side. So that's sort of my resume in terms of, life in school around the city.
High school, what high school do you go to?
Maine East in Park Ridge.
Oh, okay, all right. What actually got you into, because you're one of the leading authorities for the historian as far as organized crime in Chicago, what actually got you started in doing that?
Well, I mean, for years I was reading those books I could find in the libraries and things, just like I was reading other history. So it was just, another interest. But what happened was, a little over 25 years ago, I was between hobbies, and I heard about these guys in Chicago, a group of like historians, writers, authors who were really interested in Chicago history, but especially Chicago crime history. So I was able to join that group, and then it really took off from there.
Oh, wow. So it was just something you kind of fell into at a younger age that you found interesting and exciting. And did you wrote your, I remember when you wrote your first book, I got a copy, you actually signed it too. That book was basically about everything about organized crime. It wasn't specifically set for like your second book, which I don't want to lead into yet.
Right.
Let's talk about the first book. That was mainly about the organized crime and mob itself.
Well, the first book, The Chicago Outfit, which came out in 2003, it was a history of organized crime in Chicago from about the year 1900 up until basically the point the book comes out, 2003. That was about 180 photos and about 20,000 words.
And I have to ask, what's it about? Though I haven't and I read it, I just want them to know. Once again, you are, to me at least, I've seen the leading authority. I've seen you on A&E, the History Channel, Channel 9.
Done some of that, yeah.
You've done quite a bit of that. I've seen when they had the mob trials, you were their head correspondent, not the correspondent, but the historian.
I got interviewed a lot by media from around the country and even outside the country in 2007, because that family secrets trial was a big deal. That really put the Chicago mob in more recent times, once again, big time in the spotlight.
And way back, I'm going to go way back, in the Capone era, a lot of them had residence in Chicago somewhere, but they snuck further west away to escape that. They can always leave Chicago and feel like they're in another country somewhat. I mean, some moved to River Forest, Oak Park. Were there any other places where, other than those 2 towns, that they were most prominent in?
Well, over time, as you get into the 1920s and 1930s, you start to see prominent guys in the Chicago mob or just prominent bootleggers living around Oak Park, River Forest, and those tended to be the more higher stature guys because the housing prices are a bit higher here. But for years, 40s, 50s, 60s, etc., there were tons of organized crime figures in the surrounding suburbs as well. Elmwood Park, Melrose Park, Cicero, even Berwyn, Riverside. Oh, wow.
Now, I was watching The Godfather before I came here.
Oh.
How true is the movie to actual facts as far as the mob goes? Is it a good comparison?
Well, the movie The Godfather 1 and 2 are based on largely Mario Puzo's book, which is a novel, so there's a lot of fictionalization of organized crime in there. But Puzo did borrow things from mob history. So some of the things that show up in there, it's like, yeah, well, wait a minute, yeah, there was this mob family in Cleveland, Italian, but they adopted this Jewish kid, and he became their son and became part of what they were doing. Things like that. So Puto brought in some things from reality.
Gotcha. Now the second book you've written it recently, correct? Within the last year?
Came out a year ago.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
Well, the short title on that one is Al Capone's Beer Wars. That's really devoted to Prohibition. And the Prohibition gang wars and everything about Prohibition organized crime in Chicago. Now it starts before Prohibition. The lead-in is what was going on from the 1830s, 1840s until 1920, but the book doesn't go beyond the repeal of Prohibition in late 1933.
Okay, now I heard a funny rumor that Al Capone actually started the milk in grade schools to have milk brought to grade schools thing. Is that true?
No, there's this. Well, the story that goes around is that Al Capone was responsible for milk purity standards, by law in Chicago. Well, no, when that was put in, he was already gone. He was already in prison. So the Chicago mob might have had something to do with that, but they were also racketeering in the milk industry. This is a way, if you put in these standards that milk cannot be more than so many hours old, well, that keeps all these dairies in upper Wisconsin out of the Chicago market. It's about them. It's not about the kids.
I would think they'd understand, because it's kind of like when Vegas came along, it was about the mob. It was the mob. And no one anywhere in this country, from my understanding, would say, well, you can't do that, because the mob runs it. I mean, did the mob truly ever have more power than certain areas of the government at one point?
Around Chicago, no. Al Capone or whoever never had more power than the mayor. The mayor was always, bigger, stronger. I mean, that's why they paid off. If Capone was more powerful than the mayor, then why is he paying off the police and the politicians? Think about it this way. The mayor had, in the 1920s, 6,000 plus policemen at his call. And behind that, if necessary, the Illinois National Guard. And behind that, if necessary, even U.S. troops sent by Washington, D.C. Capone in 1931 had probably about 500 gunmen. He's not going to push the mayor around.
Okay, but I guess in that essence, then if they're paying these people off, then they do control the government. And to a degree, I suppose. Well,
the underworld is paying authorities off to look the other way in terms of their rackets.
Okay.
To give them a pass on basically the illegal stuff they're doing. That doesn't mean that they totally control the city. There's some authors that sensationalize things and try to talk about Al Capone running the entire city, or about a battle between Al Capone and certain better elements for the control of Chicago. No, I mean, the Capone gang and the other mobsters controlled the rackets, the underworld, but not the city by a long shot.
When were they at their most powerful? Their most, the strongest as a organized group? Because they call it organized crime, but it seemed as years went on, they got less organized and they kind of pulled apart to some degree. At least, is there any truth behind that? When were their most strongest, and they could pretty much do what they wanted to within reason?
Well, I don't like to think about it in terms of strength per se. Their sole goal is to just make money for themselves. Organized crime, it's all about enriching the members. So when were they at their most successful financially? I'd say probably about the early 1960s, before the federal government really clamped down on organized crime in Chicago and elsewhere. They were doing well during Prohibition, mind you, but then they lost bootlegging when alcohol became legal again, but they built up in gambling and other things. So in terms of, and we don't know for sure because we don't have a lot of facts and figures on this, but they're probably at their height, the Chicago mob, the outfit, in about 1961, 62, in terms of their success.
That's about, it's near when I was born. So you also, there's a lot of organized mob members that lived in the Oak Park and River Forest area. Mm-hmm. You offer a tour of different homes. Can you tell us about the tour itself?
Yeah, one of the things I've been doing for probably a little over 12 years now, Dave, is the Oak Park River Forest Gangster Tour called There Goes the Neighborhood. What the tour does is people ride in a bus, You don't have to get off the bus. There's no walk required. And it goes around currently 14 houses that were formerly owned by top organized crime figures in Chicago. We don't go in the house, so you could say, so what's that about? But as we're going around, I talk about each guy, his early career. When we get to the house, I talk about the house. I've been in 10 of them, by the way. Features of the house, the guy's time in the house, the family stuff. Then I switch to his later career, and then we roll on to the next place, do it again. And in the process of these 14 stops, talking about guys like Ricardo, Paul Rica, Sam Battaglia, Sam Giancana, some of whom go back to the 1920s and things like that. It's almost a complete history of organized crime in Chicago, told through the lives of these top guys.
Wow. And you know, my cameraman Tommy, he says, man, it sounds really sounded really cool. He wanted to actually go on it now. I've wanted to go on it for the past couple of years. Maybe we'll get comp tickets. I don't know. But
you know a guy?
Yeah, I know a guy. But you know, it'd be kind of cool to even. I mean, I don't know if you'd ever allow it to. You know, first off, who runs? It's yourself who organizes it and puts it on.
Right.
If anyone wanted to go see it, how would they get in contact?
Oh, in terms of getting tickets, the tickets are sold by the Oak Park Visitor Center. Their phone number is 708-848-1500. So the bus picks people up there and drops people off again in downtown Oak Park. And again, the people can buy the tickets by contacting the Visitor Center. They handle that part of the logistics and stuff. And again, you know, this is going to sound self-serving and horn tooting, whatever, but the people who've gone on the tour have been, you know, a very, very, very high percentage of them have really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and I've also heard that you got to get tickets soon or early because it does sell out.
It can. Like for this fall, I have 3 upcoming dates. I do the tours, you know, several days a year, and they're always on Sundays in terms of regular scheduled tours. September 16th, October 14th, October 28th. I think the afternoon tour on September 16th may be sold out already. I think the second tour on October 14th might be filling up. The morning runs of the tour are, I think, a bit more open on those 2 days, and I think the October 28th date is then quite a bit open. But so that those are the 3 dates this fall that are coming up that are open to the public.
That's cool. Now, I was just in the back of my mind, I thought that'd be so cool just to do a segment on that tour.
Yeah.
You know, catch them with the camera, getting on tour bus, being on the tour bus, hear you talk, hear them respond, ask questions,
right.
And then, you know, it'd just be a good little. I think it'd be cool just to go on, just to do another show on, personally. But that's something we'll talk about another time.
Right.
So, all the information about how to get tickets will be at the end of the show on the credits, and as well as your website and any other things that we need to know.
Yeah, if somebody wants to go on the web and find out information about the tour, right now I don't have a separate web page for it, but there's a Facebook group called Oak Park River Forest Gangster Tour, and there on the group description is all the information about, you know, the tour, how to get tickets, a description of what it does, and
What's the name again?
Oak Park River Forest Gangster Tour.
Okay.
So just as you can have your own page on Facebook, there's
Gotcha.
these group pages, and there's a lot of people that are members of the group per se who've been on the tour, going on the tour. But that's where you can find the basic information with updates from me about, hey, you know, next one September 16th or this and that.
Oh, cool. Okay. I've always wanted. I think I might have asked you this once before, but I'm going to ask it again. What's like the most scariest or freakiest or most something that situation where you know you probably shouldn't have been in this situation while trying to research stuff about organized crime?
Well, I mean, I haven't had a lot of that because I'm researching the history. When I do the history, that doesn't bother the current guys. They're about making money currently.
Yeah.
In fact, apparently they're intrigued by their own history. A lot of them do like to buy
This
the
is
books.
your life.
Well, like any successful organization, they're fascinated, I think, by their own history.
Yeah.
A lot of them, I think, do pick up the books that come out to one extent or another and read them. Part of it also, Dave, is I know where to go and where not to go. Like for years, John DeFranco was hanging out 2, 3, 4 days a week in the Loon Cafe over here in River Grove, so I made it a point not to spend a lot of time in the Loon Cafe. That's his watering hole then, and not mine.
Now, who, if I may ask, who is he?
Well, John DeFranco was one of the top guys in organized crime in Chicago It depends, what time slot, but more or less within the last 25 years or so.
Okay.
So he was at the very, very pinnacle at one time or another. And that was, that bar or restaurant was not too far from where we lived, and he would go in there on a regular basis. So I made a point of not going in there on a regular basis.
I won't go here in these days. Now, did you ever have a brush with someone from organized crime that it wasn't meant to be, but it just so happened it was at the same place, same time?
Yeah, there's one interesting story. I mean, as you know, Elmwood Park is just to the north of us here. I'm very close to the northern edge of River Forest, and there's a bunch of restaurants along North Avenue. Well, I went into one of the restaurants there, this is several years ago now, to grab a sandwich for lunch, and there's a table of guys, 14, 15 guys, and one of them who I knew by sight from here and there, and then looking at the table, I thought I recognized a couple other guys, and I just walked up to the counter to order my sandwich and pretended like I wasn't listening. But I heard out of my one ear the guy that I first recognized say to the guy sitting at the middle of the table, who seemed to be clearly in charge, who was probably Rudy Fratto, "That's the guy that wrote the book." And Fratto goes, "Oh yeah?" So
you got your sandwich and left.
Yeah, make mine to go.
Yeah, I gotta go.
I wasn't gonna go over and go, "Hey, you guys got an extra seat? Can I sit down here?"
Yeah, I'm gonna go fishing.
This looks like the Last Supper here. That there's 14. We can work with that.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Last lunch.
Holy smokes.
Where's Judas, guys?
Yeah, he's gonna be coming in. That'll be me coming in and saying, "Johnny, come on,
I
get
saw
my
him drinking
sandwich."
with the Romans order. Watch out.
Oh God. You know what? We're gonna be right back in a second. Hey, welcome back to the Dave Perez Show. Once again, we're here with John Binder, author, writer, about everything there is to do in this world, except for an interviewer. That's my job. I want to bring back up your second book about the bootlegging eras. They I've seen Elliot Ness, the movie, the series, as well as the Costner movie. Is any of that true to what it really was about? And what was the bootlegging years? We know it's alcohol, but did it just exist in Chicago, or did it go from Chicago to New York, Chicago, other states?
Well, in terms of the second part of your question, illegal bootlegging was a national phenomenon during Prohibition because there was a constitutional amendment that made it illegal across the country to produce and sell alcohol. So organized crime got involved in producing and selling alcohol, anywhere you can think of, basically speaking. So it wasn't just, there's bootlegging going on in Chicago. It was going on in all the major cities, and it was going on in various, other parts of the country. Anywhere people wanted to drink, they still did. It's just now that, the gangsters are supplying the beer, the wine, the hard liquor, as opposed to legitimate businesses. First part of the question. The truth about Elliot Ness has been completely distorted by the various movies and TV shows, because that's all Hollywood and that's all, strong fictionalization. There really was a guy named Elliot Ness. He was an honest, incorruptible, Prohibition agent who was in late 1930 given the job of trying to cut off the Capone gang's sources of beer and alcohol with his squad known as the Untouchables. That's very true. He did the Capone gang some financial hardship by raiding and closing breweries and distilleries, but in my opinion, Ness did not cripple the Capone gang. Ness did not dry up Chicago. The places that he raided and closed, they just opened another ones, somewhere else, and then replaced the beer made here with next week or so the beer made there, or brought it in from out of town.
Wow. I've always thought that, just from I'm not a historian by any means, I always thought that Chicago supplied the whole nation with beer, or liquor. I thought that, if they wanted beer in Wisconsin, it had to be through us bootlegging it to them, though they are like the capital of, brewery-wise.
Well, during Prohibition, in most areas, the beer was made locally. That's just how it worked.
Okay.
On the other hand, there's something to what you say, because even before Prohibition, when it was legal, Chicago was the world's capital of manufacturing pure alcohol, because pure alcohol was actually used in a lot of other products beyond for drinking, in cosmetics and all kinds of pharmaceuticals and stuff.
Huh.
So this, so what happened then when Prohibition comes into place in 1920. That puts that all off track, and then the bootleggers, for broad term, then they get heavily involved in not just the beer and certain things, but manufacturing pure alcohol, which is the basis of all alcoholic drinks. And by the time the Capone gang largely gets control of that around Chicago, the illegal pure alcohol industry, they're exporting it to many different states. West of here, some of them east. The Capone gang is exporting pure alcohol to places like Kansas, South Dakota, Minnesota. I'm trying to remember, the list of
Canada
references.
as well. I saw that in the movie. Did they go to Canada or no?
There was no prohibition in Canada. That was a U.S. law. So
okay.
everything was legal in Canada before 1920, just like before. So there's no reason for U.S. bootleggers to send anything. What did happen, though, was prohibition in the United States was a great financial harvest for the legal Canadian distilleries making Canadian whiskey. Lots of whiskey that came into the U.S., or that was consumed in the U.S., was then being imported from Canada. You could buy it legally in Canada, but once you cross the border with it, well, then you're committing an illegal act. But that was a big deal for Canadian distilleries.
Huh. One of the craziest facts from that book that people wouldn't know about bootlegging. Can you name one or two?
Just about the bootlegging stuff itself. Not that much, but one of the things the book does is it does kind of refute or dispel a lot of different myths and misconceptions, and there have been quite a few, even though there's been a lot of other books written. For example, there's this myth that the North Side gang, led by Bugs Moran in 1929, only had 7 members or less, and that St. Valentine's Day Massacre then sort of wiped out the Moran gang. No, nothing could be farther from the truth. In fact, the Moran gang doesn't break up until 18 months later, in about August 1930. Then the Capone gang, in yet another leg of the fighting between Capone's gang on the one side as the big player and the North Side gang, it's then that the Capone gang pushes them out of the north side of Chicago. There's all kinds of myths about gangland killings that have arisen over time. If you go and actually look at the details, turn out to not be true. One myth is that most of the gangland killings were drive-by shootings. Another myth is that most of them were one-way rides.
Yeah.
And they can't both be true. It's like saying 80% of the gangland killings were at night, but 90% of them were during the day.
Yeah.
No, they can't both be correct.
Yeah.
There's myths about the Thompson submachine gun was the primary weapon used in gangland killing in Chicago. No, it was used in a very, very small percentage of them. On and on and on. So what the book does is it by going and checking facts in one way or another, it refutes a lot of long-standing myths that kind of come into even the other histories.
I think that'd be a cool third book to write. The myths and truths of organized crime in Chicago, because a lot of people just get the drama part of it on when they see it in movies. I guess the Thompson submachine gun was the most recognized, weapon used by the mob.
Splashy. Hollywood loves the thing.
Yeah, and that's henceforth, everyone who watches TV thinks that there's a Superman, he can really fly. Mm-hmm. It's just what we see on TV.
Right.
Dave Perez is real, so I'm real. I'm not fake. I'm not Memorex, and this is John Binder. I might be Memorex, but...
No, you're Peruvian, I heard.
Yeah. In this finger. I want to get back to, though, also the part where we left off with the mob in Vegas.
Okay.
And the changes, like it seemed like every, 20 years or so, there were some changes within the organized crime. When they got to Vegas, which they created Vegas, that changed in due time too, because corporations started to move into Vegas and own the casinos, and the mob did they get pushed out or bought out?
Okay, pardon me.
It's okay.
Call 911.
Yeah. Only I don't know. How do you spell
how to
that?
dial?
811.
Nuevo.
Uno.
Yeah.
That's
Something like that. Anyway. Yeah, getting back to your question, Dave. In terms of the Chicago mob and the other organized crime families' involvements in Las Vegas, Las Vegas was a little hole in the desert in the early 1930s, and then it was New York mob, probably in conjunction with Chicago mob, that had this idea to build a casino and then casinos on the Strip outside of downtown Vegas, that then created the modern gambling mecca, Las Vegas.
Who was the? I keep forgetting the person's name. Who
Bugsy Siegel.
Okay, he was the one that built the first casino. Now was
On the
that
Strip.
on the Strip? Now was he? Oh, he wasn't from Chicago. He's from New York.
Bugsy Siegel was originally from New York. There's claims or statements, though, that the money that went to build that place, the Flamingo, that part of that was from Chicago. The part of it was bankrolled by the New York mob,
Okay.
New York families, and also by the Chicago mob. So that they were, active players in building the Vegas Strip in the beginning. By about 1960 or so, the Chicago mob, the outfit more than any other organized crime family in the U.S., was the biggest player in Las Vegas. They owned through frontmen, by far the most casinos on the Strip, etc. But that's changed over time. By the 1980s or so, the legitimate corporations came in and basically bought these guys out, whether it's Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, New York, etc., 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 who were the mobsters running the casinos.
I know I brought this up to you once before, and it's kind of like no one buys the mob out because
Yes, they do.
Yeah, apparently they did. So yeah, they do. But I just I asked you this question: who has more muscle, the mob or corporate America? Because I'm a conspiracy theory type of person.
Okay, I can go now, right?
I believe corporations run the country, which I believe they do, and a lot of facts to back that up. Sometimes they own presidents. They get them voted and elected at least.
So a lot of other people, unions have also been flexing,
Which was
for
run
years.
through organized crime for the most part.
A lot of unions at one time. Yeah, that's a real black eye to the labor union world. A lot of union locals in one city or another were actually controlled by organized crime.
Gotcha.
For years.
Oh God! And
Anyway,
yeah, I have so much more stuff I want to talk about. I got to do another interview with you because we're running out of time. Lastly, before we gotta go, I want you to read off the first book of yours, the name and title, the second book, and your mob tour and where to get tickets.
Okay, all right. So the two books that I have on the Chicago mob, one is titled The Chicago Outfit. The other, the short title, is Al Capone's Beer Wars. They're both available at fine bookstores and through internet, booksellers. The tour that you asked about, the Oak Park River Forest Gangster Tour, you can get information on that by going to the Facebook group called Oak Park River Forest Gangster Tour, or to get tickets directly, just call the Oak Park Visitor Center, 708-848-1500, and they will take ticket orders over the phone.
So, man, that was great. I have your first book. I don't have your second book, and I didn't go on the tour, but I'll do both. Thank you for allowing me to film here in your lovely home, and rising the Latino community to one,
From zero
to
in
one.
River Forest.
Orale, check it out. I'm here. I may not leave. Tommy, you got a shovel in the trunk? Well, we'll do it the mob way, right?
You got to stay here for the next census, so it's official. That's what, 2020?
No, I can't do that. No, I got many other things I got to do. I'll come back though. What the heck? But it was great having you on the show. There's so many more things I would love to ask. I just ran out of time. I'll have all the information at credits about everything you mentioned about his both books and the tours. And we will look forward to seeing you very soon. I'd love to get you on the show again.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Next time you got to pay me though, okay?
Oh.
Not pesos, So.
Peso pal?
Yeah,
like
peso.
The electronic Mexican currency?
Oh my God. Okay, we're gonna do a comedy bit next time instead of the mob stuff. But thank you once again for coming on the show.
Welcome.
It was a blast as always. Right. Thank you, and we will see you next week. God bless and be good.
La vecinita del frente, buena